or chain of 9 or anything in between. So what about if you're getting 70% of the questions correct as opposed to 50, and we bank after every correct question? The decision tree is similar, but as you can see, the percentages are different on each branch. So we've got 70% chance of getting the first one correct and each one, and 30% chance of getting it incorrect. These are the same amounts that we saw earlier, because that doesn't change because we're banking at £20. So we can work out the expected winnings in the same way. So we're doing 0.7 times 0.7 times 40 plus 0.7 times 0.3 times 20 and so on, which gives us £28. Divided over the two questions, £14 per question. So how about if we bank at £50 after a chain of 2 correct questions? So it's the same again, same percentages again here, and the same banking things that we saw earlier. If we work out the expected winnings for that decision tree, we get £28.70, which when averaged gives £14.35 per question, which is 35 pence more per question than banking at £20. So the table for this. And it turns out that if you're getting 70% of your questions correct, it's actually better to bank at £200 than any other banking level, which is after a chain of 4 correct questions. As you go past the £200 level, if you're waiting for longer chains, the expected winnings actually decrease. So what I did was I used Microsoft Excel to simulate a 5-question decision tree rather than the 2 questions that you've just seen. And with this, it allowed me to put any percentage of questions you're getting correct in, and that would work out the total expected winnings for that 5 questions. So it looks a bit like this. I wouldn't worry too much about this, but basically this is a decision tree like the one I've just shown you. All the greens are correct answers, all the whites are incorrect answers. This is the percentage where I can input any percentage of correct questions. This is for banking at 20, and I did for 20, 50, 100, 200 and 300. And then these are what you would have if you banked at 20 in this particular scenario. So there's 32 different scenarios here, all have different banking. And these values are just each one times multiplied by each other and then multiplied by the banking amount. When you add all those up, this is your total expected winnings for those 5 questions. So with this, I was able to put in any percentage of correct questions and work out the expected winnings. So this allowed me to create a graph for each percentage of questions correct. So for 50%, as we can see, if you're banking at £20, your expected winnings are up here around the 50 mark. But as you increase the banking level, so as you wait for longer chains of correct answers, the expected winnings actually decrease, and this occurs all the way down to £1,000. And 70% also rings true with what I said earlier. It increases your expected winnings right up until a chain of 4 correct answers, and then for 5 correct answers, so the £300 mark, actually decreases. And it turns out that any level, up to 1,000, £200 is the best for 70%. Now for 90%, so if you're very good at your general knowledge, or this is the first round of the game where the questions are quite easy, the expected winnings actually increase all the way right up into 1,000. So when you're getting 90% of answers correct, you should wait for a chain of 9 correct questions in order to bank. So with these graphs, I was then able to create a total graph with all the possible percentages of questions correct, and that looks a bit like this. So we've got percentage of questions correct along the bottom here, and your optimal banking level at the side here. So as you can see, from 0 to 60% of questions correct, you should bank at 20, which is after 1 correct question. From 60 to 71, you're banking at £200, which is after 4 correct questions. From 90 to 100, you bank at 1,000. Now the reason there's nothing from 71 to 89% is because to do this, I would have to have done a 9-question decision tree in that Excel simulation you saw, which would have required 2 to the power 9 different scenarios, which is 512 rows, so that's why I didn't go into that. So this is the 72% one, which is the one that I didn't have a value for. As you can see, it increases right up until a chain of 4 correct questions, and then it increases again for 5 correct questions in a row. So I'm unsure as to whether it would increase all the way to the 1,000 or whether it would decrease after that. I'm hoping to look into that after this presentation. So we can summarise this in a table. If you're getting 0 to 60% of questions correct, you bank after every correct question. 61 to 71, bank after 4 correct questions in a row at £200. 72 to 89 is somewhere between 300 and 1,000, but I'm not sure yet. 90 to 100, wait for a chain of 9 correct answers. So what does all this mean? By estimating the percentage of questions you get correct, you can actually bank optimally during the weakest link rounds. So in the first round, you only bank at £1,000. But if you're only getting 50% of questions correct, your optimal banking level is £20. This means that every time Anne gets to you and there is any amount of money in the pot, you must bank. This doesn't just apply for £20. One thing to notice is that £50 and £100, so after 2 and 3 chain answers, are never optimal banking levels. However, if your optimal banking level is £20 and you should be banking at £20, then this means that you should bank whenever it gets to you on 50 or 100, or any more than £20 is in the pot already. The same applies if you're meant to be banking at £200 and it gets to you on £600, you should bank then as well. So we can see this in a table. We've got how much has already been earned by the other contestants when Anne reaches you along here, and your optimal banking level at the side here. So if your optimal banking level is £20, you bank no matter what is in the pot, except £0 obviously. If your optimal banking level is £200, you bank at £200 or more, and obviously £1,000, only bank at £1,000. One other thought, if Anne gets to you and there's less than 10 seconds on the timer, you should bank no matter what your optimal banking level is. This is because a question and answer set usually takes more than 10 seconds. So it's best just to bank whatever you've got there and keep it safe. So to conclude, it's difficult to play all aspects of the weakest link optimally. However, the psychology of the game must be factored in, as with a lot of quiz shows. But in general, it's possible to bank optimally in the weakest link and vote intelligently according to some strategy. So thank you for listening. Are there any questions? Yeah.
I was wondering, on your banking strategies, if you also considered the risk, like the standard deviation that you get from different strategies. So even though the mean money that you might get might be higher with one banking strategy, there might be also a high standard deviation, so there's a risk of getting no money or very little money.
Yeah, that's something to think about, definitely. Certain strategies are riskier than others. Obviously, if you're waiting for the longer chain you're waiting for, I think the standard deviation will increase, making it more of a risky strategy. But if you're banking after every correct question, then that's less risky. But yeah, that's something to think about, definitely.
Okay, if we could thank Nick again for speaking, and then we're going to move on to our next talk.